Chapter 11. This venerable one is gonna smooch. Rejoice!
Yes, that's me,
said Madame Chen, weeping.
But I didn't write on the tablet. Why would I curse my own child?
Indeed, you would not have done it while awake, but that's not necessarily true when you're asleep. Chuaning lifted his hand to pick up the memorial tablet as he spoke, channeling spiritual energy into his palm. Suddenly, blood-curdling screams erupted from the tablet, followed instantly by heavy, festering scent of the blood that trickled forth from it. Chuaning's eyes were cold and piercing, his voice stern. Arrogant, wicked spirit, you dare to run so rampant? Faced with the potential spiritual power gathered in his palm, the writing on the tablet was forced to recede bit by bit, screaming as it did. It soon faded and finally vanished altogether. Chuaning squeezed with his pale, slender fingers, and the entire memorial tablet shattered. The Chen family, watching from behind, was stunned. Even Shimei was struck. He couldn't help exhaling. How impressive. Moran also couldn't help exhaling, albeit internally. How vicious. Chuaning's face turned slightly in their direction. His elegant features were devoid of feeling, but a few specks of blood had splattered his cheek. He lifted his hand to examine the blood on his fingertips before speaking to the Chen family. All of you, stay in the courtyard today. Don't go anywhere. Obviously, none of them would dare do anything but comply after that display, and they promptly answered, Yes, we'll obey Dao Zhang's every instruction. Chuaning strode out of the shrine room, indifferently wiping the bloodstains off of his face. He lifted a finger to point at Madame Chen. Especially you. Do not fall asleep under any circumstances. That thing is capable of possession, so you must remain awake, no matter how drowsy you become.
Yes.
Madame Chen agreed repeatedly. Then she asked cheerily, with a measure of hesitance.
Then, Dao Zhang, my son, is he safe?
For now. Madame Chen stared blankly.
For now? Not forever? Then what must be done to keep my son safe?
The demon must be captured, Chuaning replied. In her panicked worry, Madame Chen forgot her manners and threw courtesy aside to ask urgently,
And just when is Dao Zhang planning to go capture it?
Right now? Chuaning's gaze swept over the Chen family. Which of you knows the exact location of the red coffin's exhumation? Lead the way. The surname of their eldest son's wife was Yao. Despite being a woman, she was tall and gallant. Though her face had some dread in it as well, she was relatively calm compared to the others, and immediately offered her help.
I know the location, since it was selected by my late husband and myself. I will guide Dao Zhang.
Chuaning, Moran, and Shimei followed Madame Chen Yao. Heading north, they soon arrived at the plot of land that the Chens had purchased. The area was overgrown and poorly lit, and it had been cordoned off. There was no one around for miles. It was also completely silent. Not even the sounds of birds and insects could be heard. Halfway up the mountain, the foliage gave way to a clearing.
Honored Dao Zhang's, this is the place,
said Madame Chen Yao. A grave-sealing rock lay on top of where the red coffin had been dug up. Moran burst out laughing at the sight of it. What good is that crappy rock gonna do? It's clearly the work of amateurs. Just toss it aside. Madame Chen Yao was apprehensive. But the professional from town who we consulted said that the demonic beast inside the rock holds the evil spirit down and keeps it from getting out. Moran smiled sarcastically. That professional sure has been effective so far. Madame Chen Yao balked.
Toss it aside. Toss.
No need, Chuaning said grimly. He lifted his hand, fingertips glowing golden as Tian Wen answered his call. A single flick of the willow vine and the rock shattered to pieces. Expressionless, Chuaning walked over to stand amidst the debris and once again raised his hand in a threat. What are you hiding for? Get the hell up. A strange grinding sound came from below before a 12-foot-tall wooden coffin burst forth from the ground, spraying earth and dust that flew everywhere. This coffin has such aggressive demonic energy, Shimei said, startled. Step back, said Chuaning. Tianwen struck the tightly sealed red coffin in a backhanded lash, sending sparks flying. There was a moment of silence, then the lid of the coffin shot open, and the object inside was revealed as the thick smoke from the explosion dispersed. Inside the coffin was a completely naked man. He had a straight nose and handsome features, and would have looked merely asleep, if not for the paper-pale pallor of his skin. Moran's gaze zoomed below the man's waist, then he made a show of covering his eyes. Ah yeah, that stinky jackass isn't wearing any pants. Shimei and Chuaning stared at him. My husband! Madame Chen Yao cried out, surprised. She made to rush toward the coffin without a second thought, but was restrained by Chuaning, who reached out to hold her back. This is your husband? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes, that's my husband. Madame Chen Yao was stricken with both fear and grief. How did he end up here? We definitely interred him at the ancestral grave, fully dressed in burial clothes. How did he? Before she could finish, she began to bawl, beating her chest in anguish. How could this happen? So wretched, so wretched! My husband, my husband! Madame Chen, Shimei murmured. My condolences. Chuaning and Moran, on the other hand, both ignored the weeping woman. Chuaning didn't know how to comfort people, and Moran had no compassion to speak of. Both their attentions were fixed on the corpse in the coffin. Moran had already gone through this once before, and so knew more or less what was coming, but he had to act his part, so he stroked his chin and remarked, Shizun, something's fishy about this corpse. I know. Chuaning replied. Moran paused. He'd actually had an entire speech planned out, ripped directly from Chuaning's original explanation and analysis from their previous lifetime. He'd wanted to whip it out in this one to give Chuaning a shock. But how could he have predicted that Chuaning would just casually throw out an I know? As a teacher, wasn't he supposed to encourage his disciples to speak their minds and to praise and reward them for doing so? Refusing to give up, Moran pretended not to have heard that I know and kept going. This corpse shows no sign of decomposing. Chen Gongzi died over half a month ago. In this kind of climate, he should have long since started rotting and leaking pus, and a layer of fluid from decay should have accumulated in the coffin. That is the first problem. Chuaning shot him a cold, you may continue kind of look, but he said nothing. Unaffected, Moran continued to recite Chuaning's explanation from his previous lifetime. Second, the demonic energy emanating from this red coffin was very strong before it opened, but conversely, it vanished after it did so. Moreover, there's practically no demonic energy on the corpse itself, which is also quite abnormal. Chuaning said nothing. Third, have you noticed that ever since the moment the coffin opened, there's been a sweet fragrance in the wind? The scent was awfully subdued. One wouldn't have noticed it at all without paying careful attention. At Moran's words, Shimei and Madame Chen Yao realized that there was indeed a faint, sweet smell in the air. You're right, said Shimei. Madame Chen Yao sniffed and her face blanched. This fragrance! Mistress Chen, what is it? Asked Shimei. Madame Chen Yao was so scared that even her voice changed tone. This fragrance is my mother-in-law's secret formula, 100 butterfly fragrance. No one spoke for a moment. That line, written on the memorial tablet in the shrine room, erected by a living member of the Chen Sun clan, seemed to appear before their eyes. Could it be that this whole thing really is the elder Madame Chen's doing? Shimei asked. It's unlikely, said Moran. It is not, said Chuaning. The two spoke at nearly the same time, then looked at each other. Chuaning's look remained even. Go ahead. Moran spoke without modesty. As far as I know, the Chen family made it their fortune off of the Madame's unique 100 butterfly fragrance. Its formula is kept secret, but the finished product isn't hard to obtain. More than half the girls in Butterfly Town wear this perfume. In addition, we looked into this beforehand, and it seems that Chen Gongzi also quite liked his mother's 100 butterfly fragrance and often mixed it into his bathwater when bathing. So it's not at all strange that his body carries the scent. What is strange is that he turned his head back toward the naked man in the coffin. He's been dead for half a month, but this fragrance is as fresh as if it had only just been applied. Am I right, Shizun? Chuaning was silent. If I'm right, could you praise me just a teensy-weensy little bit? Moran asked. Chuaning said only, Moran laughed. You really don't like to waste words. He'd hardly gotten in 2 chuckles before they were lost in a flurry of billowing ropes as Chuaning grabbed him and swiftly moved them back several feet. In his hand, Tian Wen glowed brightly golden, fiery light dancing. Look out! The smell of 100 butterfly fragrance in the air suddenly thickened, and a white fog materialized as the scent filled the clearing, spreading with alarming speed. Almost instantly, the entire area became a sea of fog, so dense that one couldn't even see the fingers on their own hand. Moran's heart stirred. The illusory realm was unfolding. Ah! Madame Chen Yao's shriek was the first thing he heard in the thick fog. Dao Zhang, help! She didn't get to finish before the sound of her voice was cut off. Chuaning's fingertip glowed blue as he placed the tracking enchantment on Moran's forehead. Be careful. I'm going to check out the situation. Then he quickly disappeared into the impenetrable fog, heading in the direction of Madame Chen Yao's cry. Moran touched his forehead, laughing in low tones. Well, well, well. Even the position of the enchantment is exactly the same as in my last lifetime. Chuaning, you really haven't changed at all. The fog dispersed as quickly as it came, and before long it was completely gone. However, the scene that revealed itself to Moran was even more startling than the fog had been. At least, it had given him quite the scare in his last lifetime. When the fog disappeared, the desolate and overgrown mountain he should have seen was gone. In its place was a vast expanse of an intricate and elegant garden landscape, filled with pavilions and winding verandas, rock gardens and verdant trees, and a cobblestone path that stretched beyond what the eyes could see. The mere sight of this place made Moran want to roll on the ground in joy. This tyrannical jackass had been thinking about this very illusory realm all day. In his previous life, they'd all become separated here as well. Moran had run into Shimei first, and, under the illusion's enchantment, had kissed him for the first and only time in his life. Unfortunately, that time, Shimei had fled as soon as Moran let go, perhaps out of fright. Moran had barely even gotten a taste of the sweet nectar before it was snatched away, leaving him terribly unsatisfied. Later, after the illusory realm was broken, Shimei hadn't kicked up a fuss about it. It was as if the kiss had never even occurred, and neither of them ever brought it up again. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, Moran had wondered if it had just been a fantasy born of his deep obsession. Fantasy or not, Moran thought as he licked his lips. Shimei isn't getting away that easily this time. I'm gonna get my fill of smooches all at once.